Welcome back to the unused and cut video game content Iceberg. We're here with part 4, the final part of this long series. So if you haven't seen the other parts yet, make sure to go check them out. Link to the Iceberg playlist is in the description. But yeah, we're going to be capping off this Iceberg today. Although I will be posting a supercut of all parts from this Iceberg combined into one long video. That will also include some corrections as well as a couple of bonus entries sprinkled throughout. But without further ado, let's jump back into the unused and cut video game content Iceberg. Super Mario Bros. 3 Centaur Power-Up. So this one's extremely simple, so there's not a lot to talk about here. But basically during the development of Super Mario Bros. 3, a power-up was briefly considered in which Mario would actually turn into a centaur, which is a half-horse, half-man hybrid. Although this idea ended up being rejected. Perfect head. Perfect dark. So this was a cut feature that would actually allow players to import pictures from the Game Boy camera to the N64 using a transfer pack. And this would be used in Perfect Dark to apply these images onto the heads of guards in the game. The head models could also be manipulated as well with options such as reshaping it, as well as even selecting a hairstyle for it. However, this feature was cancelled due to, quote, insurmountable technical problems. Although apparently the feature was fully functional at one point during the game's development. However, there is no code in the game that remains tied to Perfect Head. Although there is some in-game text that was found using a GameShark code, which shows a lot of the options that could be tweaked when using this feature. Original Mario and Luigi voice actors, Hotel Mario. So Hotel Mario is one of the kind of more obscure Mario games, as it was released on the not-so-successful console, the Philips CDI, in 1994. But one of the other notable things about the game is that Mario wasn't actually voiced by Charles Martinet, who has been known for voicing the character in most roles since 1992. Instead, in this game, both Mario, Luigi, and Bowser were all voiced by Mark Grau. And his interpretation is very different from the one most people recognize. Although this was one of the first console games to have Mario voice acting, and still, people didn't really like the performance. This entry though may be referring to the fact that Charles Martinet and the other voice actors may have at one point been asked to work on this project, but I couldn't really find any information on that. Dirty Disc Message, Link the Faces of Evil, and Zelda the Wand of Gamelon. Ah yes, two more great CDI games. So in 2 of the 3 Zelda titles released for the CDI, there was a kind of strange cut feature which would have featured the voice actors of Link and Zelda telling the player that their game disc was dirty, and the steps that they should take to clean it.
Hey, I think your game disc is dirty. Try ending the game and cleaning your disc.
Hey, I think your disc is dirty. Try ending the game and cleaning your disc.
And it wasn't only the English voice actors either. They recorded lines for many different languages. Super Mario Bros. Shoot 'em up sections. Yes, you heard that right. According to an interview with Shigeru Miyamoto, it was said that in the original control scheme for the first Super Mario Bros., that up on the D-pad would jump, B would do a dash move, and A would actually shoot, as in fire bullets. He even said about this, quote, "We originally thought about having a shoot 'em up stage, where Mario jumps on a cloud and shoots at enemies, but we dropped it because we wanted to focus on the jumping action." The sky-based bonus stages are the remnants of that idea, you could say. So yeah, SMB almost had a shooting stage before that mechanic was eventually tweaked and changed into the fireball. Pretty interesting stuff. KGB Troops, Alien Hominid. So Alien Hominid is a pretty old Newgrounds game, but eventually it was given a console release, and the developers have gone on to make some really good and popular games. Some that you might even recognize, like Castle Crashers and Battle Block Theater. Anyway though, so in the actual game files of the original Flash version, there was found to be these fully developed animations of KGB troops, as they were likely planned to appear in the game, although of course they never did. Not too strange considering you fight FBI troops in the game, but interesting nonetheless. Link Mask, Majora's Mask. So simply enough, inside the code of Majora's Mask, there was a model of a mask that was found which was of Child Link, and although it isn't used anywhere in the base game, it actually can be used by Skull Kid by using a certain gecko code in the English version of the game, which will make Skull Kid use this mask instead of Majora's mask. Bond Man, Mega Man. This was a robot master and boss that was planned to be included in the original Mega Man game as one of the stage bosses. However, he was eventually scrapped as the amount of stage bosses was cut down from 8 to just 6. However, one of his mechanics was used for the Ice Slasher, that being his special weapon that would freeze enemies. Extra character trophies, Super Smash Bros. Brawl. So Super Smash Bros. Brawl already has a ton of trophies in the game, but apparently there were some extra character trophies which were not actually included in the game, which may have been referenced in the game's code, such as a Ridley Assist trophy. But there were also even unused models of playable characters which were found in the ISO file of Brawl, which were showcased in a video by Sean the Squirrel on YouTube. Rhythm Heaven Megamix Test Minigame. In the Japanese version of Rhythm Heaven Megamix, quite a few graphics and animations were found relating to a test minigame. These included sprites for a background, as well as sprite sheets for various characters, and there even were some animations of these characters, dancing, punching, kicking, and doing other various things. There were also animations for enemies as well, and a character called Boss, as he's named in the files. Okoru, Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door. There is an unused enemy within the files of Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door, known simply as the file name Okoru, which means roughly to get angry in Japanese, which possibly would have had something to do with that meter rising on his head as he got angry. However, we don't know for sure, as this image is the only thing that was found in the files of this cut enemy. Dildo Weapon, Manhunt 2. Oh boy, so yeah, in Manhunt 2 there is actually a dildo weapon which was found. More specifically, the model was found in a PS2 beta version of the game, while the sounds and animations relating to executions with this weapon were found in the PC version, where it was eventually restored, and you can watch the executions on YouTube, but I'm not going to show them here as they are very violent and graphic. However, I'll go into all the cut weapons and executions of Manhunt in another video, where I will actually show all of these animations and stuff, so stay tuned for that. Or you can just look them up on YouTube if you're curious. Fahrenheit Indigo Prophecy was meant to be 2 games. So Fahrenheit was developed for over 2 years by a company called Quantic Dream of over 80 employees. And interestingly, the script of the game was completed in just 1 year by the writer and director of the game, David Cage. And the script was a whopping 2,000 pages, which is pretty insane. However, this might have also been because the game was originally planned as a kind of episodic title, which would have had many writers working on it with a planned total of 12 installments. Although the director, David Cage, didn't really like this idea and moved away from it, taking their narrative and plot and making it into just 1 game. So I'm not really too sure what it means by 2 games. Really, it was originally going to be 12 different episodes or installments, before that ended up being changed. Unused effects, Yume Nikki. In the game Yume Nikki, the protagonist, Madotsuki, has access to 24 effects throughout the game, which alter her appearance and grant her special abilities. And well, there were some planned effects that went unused in the game. First, there was the blindfold, and we don't actually know what it would have done, but we can probably guess it had something to do with her ability to see. Next, there was the grayscale, which would turn her sprite into a monochrome color scheme. And it's not really known what this would have done, although it's speculated that she might have appeared as this in the White Desert area. And lastly is the Will-O-the-Wisp, which would have turned her into a flame-like spirit, although it's not really known what effect this would have had in the game. Spaceman, LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga. In the LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga, released for Windows in October of 2009, there was an unused character which was found called simply Spaceman, who is simply thought to be some sort of test character that might have been used in the original LEGO Star Wars, as some of his features aren't fully modeled correctly, such as his face as it only has 1 eye. Chef Ghost, Luigi's Mansion. Originally in the first Luigi's Mansion game for the Nintendo GameCube, There was planned to be a chef ghost found in the kitchen area, although this was eventually scrapped before release, although he can be seen in early pre-release screenshots. However, in Luigi's Mansion 3, released in 2019, there is an official chef ghost boss fight. Maya the Bee and her friends was originally South Park GBC. Wait a minute, what? Yeah, okay, so this game right here, this kid-friendly puzzle game based on a German cartoon, was actually initially a South Park game developed for the Game Boy Color. How do we know this? Well, first of all, a Game Shark code can be used to open up a hidden menu in the game, which is the same one that can be found in the South Park game prototype. But that's not all. Actually, several graphics from the South Park game were found in the Maya game ROM, such as these characters from South Park, as well as this character who looks pretty similar to Itchy from The Simpsons, so not sure why he's in here to be honest. And eventually that lost South Park prototype was found and released as a ROM in 2018. And you can see the various similarities between the two games. Although the South Park game was cancelled because Nintendo and the creators of South Park didn't think it was appropriate to release an adult game for a system mainly played by children. Board game. Bug Fables: The Everlasting Sapling. So in Bug Fables, a game heavily inspired by the Paper Mario series, there were some unused and cut arcade games that were Mario Party-like minigames, such as one called Board Game in the files, which had some text and sprites related to it that were found, as well as some screenshots which show what the gameplay might have looked like. Peter Pan: Disney Infinity. Peter Pan was a planned but ultimately cut character from Disney Infinity 3.0, and was scrapped due to the cancellation of Disney Infinity by the game's developer, Avalanche Software. And so not much else is known about the character, as there is no gameplay footage at all that exists. However, there is a brief description that reads, quote, "Neverland's favorite lost boy uses his acrobatic flying skills while wielding his dependable dagger." And just to be clear, in case you haven't heard of Disney Infinity or how it works, which I wouldn't blame you, I didn't have any idea until I read up on this, but the characters have actual physical action figures that are used to play the characters by placing them on a Disney Infinity base, similar to something like Skylanders or Amiibos, something like that. But yeah, there were actually a couple of Peter Pan figures which were actually made and now are extremely rare and valuable if you can manage to even find one. GTA Classic was an open world sandbox with dinosaurs. Wow, okay, so apparently the first GTA game developed by Rockstar was originally going to be an open world game with dinosaurs. So yeah, this series has definitely had an interesting evolution. Now originally, GTA as we know it was called Race and Chase, and was a concept for a game about simply cars and driving, without the, Grand Theft Auto part. Although there was still going to be crime, as it was planned to be a multiplayer game with bank robbery missions, where you could play as either the cops or the robbers. And there were also going to be just cops around the map who would chase you, all that stuff, and you're probably thinking, well, that's all great, but where are the dinosaurs? Well, in the prototypes of the game provided by one of the developers, Mike Daly, it was found that there was a demo called Dino, which was from another prototype called Attack, which was a game about dinosaurs supposedly rampaging through a city. And even in the files of the final release of Grand Theft Auto, a file relating to this can be found called dino.bat. Level 8 and 9, The Simpsons Hit and Run. So this one's really simple, but essentially in the various files relating to levels in the game, there were folders found for levels 8 and 9, although in the final game there are only 7 levels, and looking inside these folders reveals nothing. So yeah, just 2 empty folders, although I guess this does imply that at some point 2 more levels were planned for the game. Ahsoka and Padme, Star Wars Battlefront 2. So in 2020, Star Wars Battlefront 2 got its last major update and ended support for future heroes being added to the game, which is a shame, as it was promised by the creative director of the game that more female heroes would be introduced into the game. However, in 2019, he said that he regretted that comment, as he shouldn't make such risky promises like that, and unfortunately, fan-favorite characters like Ahsoka and Padme, which many thought were going to be added, never were. despite being rumored and even references to them being data mined in the files. Unused audio, Doom 64. In the Nintendo 64 version of Doom, first released in 1997, there were found to be a couple of unused audio clips, those being these sounds. The first two being unused due to technical limitations, and the last two going unused because they were related to the Revenant enemy from Doom 2, which didn't make it into the game due to storage constraints. Morton and Lemmy voices, Mario is missing. Two of the Koopalings that are never featured throughout the game are Morton and Lemmy, who actually did have some voice lines which were recorded that were found in the files. So here are just a couple of them.
You know, Luigi, a smart guy like you ought to join up with the winners. Here's a nice turtle shell you can wear. If you can't defeat us, you might as well join us. What's a nice plumber like you doing in a place like this? With your talent, you ought to be unclogging drains somewhere, not trying to embarrass yourself as a detective.
Go away, plumber's helper! The only place you'll see your brother's face is on a milk carton! The cold truth of the matter is, this turtle is only afraid of one thing. And it's one thing you haven't got, buddy. Fire flowers!
Crying Baby audio, Dark Souls 3. Okay, so this is very disturbing, like, really. So I'm not going to play the whole audio, but if you want to listen to the entire thing, you can easily find it on YouTube. But essentially, these are cut lines of an infant crying, which would have played during the Osiros boss fight. Osiros? I don't know how you say that. And you might be thinking, what's so bad about that? It's just a baby crying. It's a little weird, but nothing too bad, right? Well, yeah, let's just say that that's not all that happens. I mean, listen to the rest of the audio if you want, but be warned, yeah, it sounds like something happens to said baby. Yeah, moving on. Old Essentia Dungeon and Old Sewer Dungeon, YIIK, a postmodern RPG. Now, admittedly, I don't know much at all about this game, so I'm going to kind of just briefly explain what I know about these two entries and combine them here into one. So I guess in the game there are two versions of dungeons which were cut from the game, those being the Old Sewer and Essentia Dungeons, which were showcased in a YouTube video by Combat Lobster, where he showed all of the other cut content found within this game, so if this interests you, definitely go check it out. The Sonic the Hedgehog Band, Sega Sonic Bros. So interestingly, this game itself, Sega Sonic Bros, was never actually fully released in its own right, but essentially it was meant to be an arcade puzzle game. However, even though it didn't officially release, a ROM was found which can be played, and in this ROM was found the various sprites of Sonic band members, which, if you remember from one of the previous parts of the Iceberg, was a concept that was planned for the first Sonic the Hedgehog game, but was never actually used. Poacher, Carnivore's Ice Age. The Poachers were planned human enemies in the game Carnivore's Ice Age, which were going to be human NPCs that would actually hunt the player. However, at some point they were scrapped. However, by editing a file in the game, it's possible to actually add the poacher back into the game. Minecarts storing items, Minecraft. So I guess this was a planned feature where minecarts would actually be able to store items like a chest. However, now in the game, there are minecarts with chests and minecarts with hoppers, which can be used in this very way. Purple Feathers, Angry Birds. So this is really kind of a basic one. Just some purple feather textures which were found in the PC version of Angry Birds, which was seen as a hint by fans that a new purple bird was coming to the game. However, that bird was never released as far as I'm aware. Terrorist attack image in Mario Kart Arcade GP. Alright, the final tier coming right out of the gate with some weird stuff. Great. So yeah, in Mario Kart Arcade GP, a couple of images were found called CamTest00, CamTest01, and CamTest02.jpg. The first one was a simple color test, and the second was of mascots at an expo in Japan, and the third one was, well, a picture of a real-life school hostage crisis where 1,100 people were taken hostage in a school in Beslan, North Ossetia. Now, why was this specific image used? Even if it was just for testing purposes, who knows? Personalized Pikmin AI. I'm serious. That's what the actual entry says. I didn't add that in, but what an absolute meme. If someone could tell me what they think this means, I would appreciate it. Unless, of course, this is just related to the every copy of Mario 64 is personalized meme, but yeah. Anguillus, Godzilla Monster of Monsters. So there were two monsters which were cut from the game that were also going to be playable, those being Anguillus and Rodan. And Anguillus can actually still be accessed in the game by freezing this RAM address at 03, whatever that means, which allows Anguillus to be in a mostly playable state. Although he lacks attack animations and he can't be damaged by enemies and can even sometimes completely crash the game. Rodan, Godzilla Monster of Monsters. So yeah, this was the other unused and cut playable character in Godzilla Monster of Monsters, who could also be accessed by freezing the same RAM address, but this time at 02. Although Rodan is in an even less playable state than Anguillus, and fights against monsters with this character will simply crash the game. However, the sprites of Rodan do exist in both the Japanese and international versions of the game. Unknown Nintendo Employee Pictures. Super Mario 64 on Nintendo 64 disk drive. So this is referring to a version of Super Mario 64 that was planned to be released for the Nintendo 64 DD or disc version, and it was showcased on the unit at a Nintendo show in 1996. But basically found within the files of the game were some unused graphics, and among them were these images of what is assumed to be an unknown Nintendo employee who has still yet to be identified. And it's unknown why these images are even in the files. Propeller hat in Super Mario Bros. So this refers to the idea that in Super Mario Bros. 1, the propeller cap was a planned feature, or at least something that was looked into conceptually, which can be seen in these rough sketches dating back to the development of SMB1, which shows a propeller hat, similar to the one seen many years later in New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Naked Woman. Blasto. So Blasto is a third-person shooter game released in 1998 for the PlayStation 1, where you play the role of Captain Blasto as you platform and fight aliens. Now there were a couple of unused images that were found in the files of this game, some just being simple copyright notice screens and some just being placeholder images. But also in the files was found an image of a fully nude woman, which I obviously can't show here on YouTube, but yeah, it exists. And someone left it in there for whatever reason. Whoops. Tokone, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror prototype. While there are a bunch of unused and cut assets found in the prototype of Kirby and the Amazing Mirror, there is only one unused enemy, and that is Tokone. Probably butchering that name, but yeah. Only its sprites as well as its name have been found within the ROM. And it's thought that this is a kind of clock-like enemy, simply based on its design. Redneck Kong, Diddy Kong Pilot. Okay, so this is a bit of a weird one, but there was a prototype of a now cancelled racing game called Diddy Kong Pilot that was being developed for the Game Boy Advance in 2001. However, this game was never actually released, and this prototype was actually eventually turned into Banjo Pilot, which released in 2005 for the Game Boy Advance. However, a ROM of one of the builds of Diddy Kong Pilot was found in 2013. And on this ROM, a lot of interesting content was found that was actually cut from the version of Diddy Kong Pilot that was shown off in 2001. And one of those things was a character called Redneck Kong, who appeared on the character selection menu and could be highlighted, although he could not actually be selected. Hat Kong / Fedora Kong, Donkey Kong Land. There are quite a few characters that were meant to be included in Donkey Kong Land, but were eventually cut at some point and went unused. And one of those is this Kong, that is not actually officially named, but has been called Hat Kong and Fedora Kong by fans, who, like those names suggest, is seen wearing a fedora-like hat. Not much else, though, is known about this cut character. Tiara Bubowski, Sonic Extreme. So this pertains to another cancelled and unreleased game, which is Sonic Extreme, which was going to be the first 3D Sonic game developed for the Sega Saturn. However, the project was eventually cancelled, although many builds of the game have surfaced over the years, showing what the game might have looked like, as well as the cut content itself. And one of the new characters that was going to be featured in the game was Tiara Bubowski. Yes, that was her actual name. And she was intended to be a love interest for Sonic, as well as one of the 4 planned playable characters. And there's a lot of concept art showing what the character was planned to look like. Secret Passwords. Dick Vitale's Awesome Baby College Hoops. What an interesting name for a basketball game. Anyway, this concerns some secret passwords that were left in the game by developers, either as an Easter egg or by accident. But basically, there's codes that would change the names of the people on your team, such as these, for example. I like this one, the White House with a bunch of presidents, and then at the bottom, for some reason, you've got the CIA, FBI, and the NSA. Why they couldn't think of any more presidents, I don't know. But shout out to the CIA, best point guard in the game. Potential Kool-Aid Man appearance. Family Guy back to the multiverse. So I'm pretty sure this refers to the idea that the Kool-Aid Man was planned to make an appearance in the Family Guy video game released in 2012, Back to the Multiverse. This is probably theorized because the Kool-Aid Man has made many appearances in the actual show, and was voiced by Seth MacFarlane in pretty much all of these appearances. So it's possible that at one point a cameo for the character was also planned for the game, but at some point was cancelled. Carmageddon Forever logo in Wacky Races, Crash and Dash's files. In the files of a Wii racing game titled Wacky Races, Crash and Dash, there was found this graphic which was of what looks like a menu to a game called Carmageddon Forever. However, this game does not exist. And so it's theorized that this may have been the original title and menu for this game before it was changed. Unused graphics, Tecmo Night. Okay, not gonna lie, this one kind of shocked me when I looked into it, because that's a pretty unassuming title for this entry, like a lot of others on this list. But if you've never actually played this game like I have, yeah, the game's pretty gory and violent, and it's an arcade-style beat-em-up released in the 1980s. And even in the opening sequence of the game, you see 2 characters get killed in a particularly brutal fashion. But right before you can actually see the gore, it cuts to a silhouetted image. But, well, it turns out there are actual graphics of these scenes, and yeah, they are pretty gory. Unused tracks, Jetmoto 2124. So yet again, another game that was never finished or fully released, as this title, Jetmoto 2124, was meant to be a sequel to Jetmoto 3, but due to issues during development, the project had to be cancelled. Although an early ROM was found of the game in 2014. And in it, a couple of unused and changed tracks were found. Tracks as in like maps, such as Atlantis 2, Neo Rio, which can actually be loaded without the game crashing, Pacific Ocean, and a test track, which can be accessed in the ROM via codes. Gamers Hell screenshots, Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius. Okay, so that name sounds kind of ominous, but really it's not. This is just a pretty basic one. So before the release of Jimmy Neutron Boy Genius on Windows in 2001, there was actually a much earlier build that was different from the one that was seen on release. And screenshots of this build were made available from a website called gamershell.com. And there are a couple of differences in models and mapping, most notably the character model of Jimmy, which looks much more accurate and less horrifying in the final release. Shark Enemy, Little Red Hood. So this pertains to an old unlicensed NES game released in 1989 called The Little Red Hood. That's kind of infamous for being unfinished and, well, not good. But yeah, this was a basic sprite which was found that is supposedly of a shark enemy. But I don't know if it's just me, but that looks nothing like a shark. But hey, it was the NES days, so it gets a pass, I guess. Proto, Battle of the Eras. Battle of the Eras is a pretty obscure fighting game, with quotes, that was made for DOS in 1995. So Proto isn't actually a prototype build of the game like you might assume. It's actually a secret character that can be fought in the arcade mode by holding space before the match starts. However, when you try to select a character in versus mode, he can only be selected by the second player, and once you try to start the match with him selected, it will just crash the game. Prototype cutscenes. Scooby-Doo Night of 100 Frights. Now this is a pretty interesting one. So this Scooby-Doo game, released for the PS2, GameCube, and Xbox, is kind of a standard platformer game of the time. But it's one I grew up playing and remember pretty fondly. That being said though, it's very interesting that instead of 3D cutscenes, which we had in the final release, the prototype of this game actually had fully 2D animated cutscenes, which were even storyboarded in-house by Hanna-Barbera. And there are 50 of these which have been found, and even though it would be kind of jarring to switch from 2D animated cutscenes to 3D gameplay, it's kind of weird that they would go through all the effort to make these and not actually use them in-game. All of the Town with No Names unused content. Oh boy, so where do we begin with this? First of all, this game is pretty wild on its own, and it's kind of gone on to become a meme for how weird and, yeah, just weird it is. But there's a bunch of unused content with this game, so let's just get into it. First, there is an unused language select screen, which features languages in a globe-like shape or something for some reason. Then there's some random animations, some test and placeholder graphics, and just some really weird and confusing images. Like this one. Like, what am I even looking at right now? And there's also a ton of unused random voice lines from the characters in this game, such as this.
Were you born stupid, or did you have to learn to play this bad?
And some music that was also cut, such as this gem. What a slapper. Monster Party Prototype. Monster Party is another NES game released in 1989, and it's kind of a weird platforming game about, well, monsters. But there was a Japanese prototype of this game that was for a long time only in the hands of collectors, until it was finally released to the public on January 3rd, 2014, with the original title, Parody World Monster Party. And there's quite a bit of small differences, such as different color palettes for scenes and menus, and some slightly different level layouts, but there were some other pretty interesting things that were cut, such as various parodies and references to other media that likely had to be cut to avoid copyright issues, such as a Planet of the Apes style boss fight, which was swapped out for a simple and pretty boring looking pumpkin boss. There was also a mummy-like boss, which was for some reason changed, maybe due to its association with the Mummy film from 1932, but it's not like they invented mummies. They're not exactly protected by copyright. But anyway, there's also a gremlin from the movie Gremlins, which had to simply be changed to just a giant cat. And there was even a xenomorph-like boss from the movie Alien, which was changed to a Grim Reaper. And there are a couple more instances of changes here, but these are the ones I thought were the most interesting. Ninja Breadman was originally a Zool reboot. In the 1990s, there was a little series of platforming games called Zool, which were made for the Amiga and later ported to other consoles. Fast forward many years later, and the very strange platforming game for the Wii, released in 2005, called Ninja Breadman, was actually revealed to have started as an entry in the Zool series, as a reboot actually. However, after only a short amount of time in development, the reboot of Zool was cancelled, and instead 4 new games were going to be made in its place using various assets from the reboot, those being Anubis 2, Mythmakers, Trixie and Toyland, Rock'n'Roll Adventures, and Casper's Scare School. Oh, and of course, you can't forget the most infamous one, Ninja Breadman. And yeah, these games are kind of known for being shovelware, but interestingly, the animated intro of the Zool reboot was actually found, and it now can be viewed on YouTube. Game Boy printer support, Mario Artist Paint Studio. So this was another N64 disk drive game, released in Japan in 1999. It was a successor to the original Mario Paint game released on the SNES. And the game, through the use of a cable accessory which was never released, and the Game Boy printer would allow you to actually print things from the game, as can be seen in the printer icons which appear in the game's menu. There was also planned to be a Game Boy printer color that would be released that would allow you to print full color images, although that was not even announced, let alone released. Sonic and Tails playable, Mario Kart Double Dash. Released on the GameCube in 2003, Mario Kart Double Dash was the third entry in the series, introducing cooperative land play to the game. But what we're talking about here today is that Sonic and Tails were once planned to be playable characters in the game. At least they were teased as such in 2002 by Shigeru Miyamoto himself, when in an interview he said that they wanted Sonic as one of the drivers. However, of course, when the game released, he was nowhere to be found in the roster. Unused content cut voice line implying child victims, Manhunt 2. Jesus. So yeah, this game is already extremely dark and disturbing, but even so, some stuff was just too much and had to be cut. Like this cut audio, for example. Without getting into spoilers, because honestly I think this game is really underrated and you should give it a play if you can find it. Basically, one of the characters at some point has their children threatened, but you later find out that they were not actually harmed. However, that might not have always been the case, as, well, this very disturbing audio might suggest otherwise.
No! Please don't hurt me! Don't hurt the children! No! No! No!
Yeah, some pretty heavy and disturbing stuff. And that finally wraps up the unused and cut video game content Iceberg. First, I've got to thank you all so much for watching and making it to the final part of this series. And it was a lot of fun to make and just kind of learn a lot about these games that I didn't know. And like I said, besides the lost and cut content of Manhunt, which I am now working on and is coming very soon, I plan on putting out a supercut, a complete version of this Iceberg with all parts including corrections, as well as some bonus entries in the sections. But anyways, thanks again so much for watching. It's been me, sourcebrew, and I'll see you guys with the next one.